Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into the Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni.
Oh, a classic.
Yeah, so we're going to be tackling some team dynamics today.
That's right. And I think what makes Lencioni's approach so interesting is uh, he presents these dysfunctions not as like separate issues, but as a pyramid,
Hmm.
where each one builds on the last. It shows how interconnected these challenges can be.
Right. It's not just like a checklist of things to avoid. It's like this,
Cascading effect.
yeah, exactly, a cascading effect.
It all starts with an absence of trust,
Right.
which then sort of fuels this fear of conflict.
And then, of course, that leads to a lack of commitment, which then enables an avoidance of accountability.
And it all culminates in this inattention to results. It's fascinating how he lays it all out.
So to really illustrate these concepts, Lencioni creates this fictional company, right, called Decision Tech.
Yeah, decision tech, yeah.
And this new CEO, Catherine, walks into a team that's basically a poster child for dysfunction.
Oh yeah, they're a mess.
So let's go inside Decision Tech. Like, what are some of those red flags that Catherine sees right off the bat?
Well, think about teams you've been on where people are kind of hesitant to admit mistakes or ask for help.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
Okay.
That's what Lencioni calls an absence of vulnerability-based trust.
Hmm.
It's not just about knowing that your teammates will do their work.
Right.
It's about feeling safe enough to be open about, your weaknesses.
And knowing that you're not going to be judged for it.
Exactly. Knowing you won't be judged or punished for, not having all the answers.
Yeah, it's like that feeling when you can, brainstorm an idea that's totally half-baked and know that your team will help you shape it, without making you feel foolish.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. And without that foundation of trust, it's almost impossible to have the next level of the pyramid,
Yeah.
healthy conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Lencioni makes this really important distinction between productive ideological debate, right, and what he calls artificial harmony,
Right.
where people just kind of avoid rocking the boat, even if it means ignoring potential problems.
Yeah, yeah. Like in Decision Tech, when Catherine tries to use that off-site meeting to spark some real discussion,
Oh yeah,
and everyone just wants to go through the motions.
or pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And think about your own workplace, right? How often are really important issues just kind of brushed aside to avoid a confrontation?
Oh, all the time.
Right, that's fear of conflict in action.
And when you have that fear of conflict, it naturally leads to a lack of commitment, right?
Totally.
Because if you haven't really debated the options, how can you truly buy into the decision?
You're just going along to get along.
Exactly.
And we see this play out in the book when the decision tech team is struggling to even define their top priority.
Right.
Was it market share? Was it acquiring new customers? They couldn't agree.
Without that clarity, like, how can they move forward as a united front?
You can't. It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint. You know.
Right. Yeah. You end up with a bunch of mismatched pieces that don't fit together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A Frankenstein house. And speaking of things not fitting together, that brings us to avoidance of accountability, right? The next level of our dysfunction pyramid.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
And this one is tricky because it often comes from good intentions.
Mm.
No one wants to be the bad guy who calls out their teammates.
Right.
Right.
Mm.
But as Lencioni points out, by avoiding those difficult conversations, you're actually doing the team a disservice.
Because you're letting those problems fester.
Yeah, they fester and grow.
It's almost like people are more concerned with protecting each other's feelings than with, actually achieving the team's goals.
It's a misguided sense of loyalty.
Right, right.
And that's where the example of Carlos comes in. He's the head of customer support.
Right.
And he knows that there are some salespeople who just aren't pulling their weight. But he hesitates to, name them specifically.
So he's letting these individuals slide, even though it's impacting the team's overall performance.
Unfortunately, yes.
And this kind of avoidance can permeate the entire team culture, can it?
It can become the norm, and that's when you really start to see those negative results.
So we've climbed this pyramid of dysfunction and we've reached the peak, right?
The summit.
Inattention to results.
The top of Mount Dysfunction.
Okay, so what does that look like in a team setting?
Well, think about those times when individual egos or departmental goals take precedence over the team's shared success, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that classic silo mentality
Right.
where everyone is focused on their own little piece of the puzzle instead of the big picture.
Like Mikey, the marketing VP at Decision Tech,
Like
right?
Mikey, yeah.
Who seems more concerned with her own career advancement than with the company's overall success.
Yeah, she's the poster child for inattention to results, you know. And what's interesting is how Lencioni ties this back to the broader company culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this kind of behavior is tolerated, what message does it send?
That's a great question. If individual achievement is rewarded over teamwork, it's like you're creating a breeding ground for this dysfunction, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're basically saying, hey, it's okay to prioritize yourself over the team.
And then it becomes almost impossible to achieve those ambitious goals that everyone's supposedly working towards.
You're working at cross purposes. So, yeah, I think we've laid out these 5 dysfunctions, the cracks in the foundation of a team, so to speak. But where do we go from here?
Yeah. How do we start to repair the damage?
That's where Catherine's leadership and Lencioni solutions come in.
Okay, so you're saying there's hope.
Oh, there's definitely hope. But I think we need to pause here for a moment and let all this sink in for our listeners.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, let's give them a moment to reflect.
Think about your own team's listeners. Where on this pyramid of dysfunction do you see your own team operating?
Yeah, take a moment to be honest with yourselves.
We'll be back soon to explore how to climb out of that dysfunction and build a truly effective team.
And don't worry, it's not as daunting as it might seem. Lencioni provides some really practical tools and strategies to help us get there.
All right, so we're back, and you're ready for more 5 dysfunctions of a team. Before we took a pause, we were talking about the problem, that pyramid of dysfunction.
Yeah, all those challenges.
Now let's talk solutions.
Right. The good news is Lencioni doesn't just leave us hanging.
Right.
He gives us some really concrete tools to actually start rebuilding those fractured foundations. And one that I think is particularly powerful is the personal histories exercise.
Okay, so what is that? Why is it so important?
It's actually deceptively simple. You know, team members share some basic personal details.
Okay.
You know, number of siblings, hometown, hobbies they had as a kid, things like that.
Things you wouldn't normally talk about at work.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff you might not typically discuss in a a work setting.
Right, right.
But it's amazing how powerful that can be.
Because you start to see your colleagues as
Human beings, yeah.
Yeah, as human beings, exactly.
It humanizes them. They go from being just coworkers to people with their own unique stories and experiences.
I can see how that would start to break down barriers, especially in teams where people don't really know each other well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like that aha moment when you realize, the quiet guy in the corner was the state champion swimmer in high school.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's just these little things.
Yeah.
And it seems like such a low-risk way to start building that vulnerability-based trust.
Totally.
You're not diving straight into, deep, dark personal secrets.
No.
It's a way to dip your toes in the water before you take the plunge.
Exactly. And it creates this sense of camaraderie, the shared understanding. Right. That can really be the foundation for those, deeper, more meaningful connections.
Okay, so now Lencioni also talks about the team effectiveness exercise.
Right.
Yeah. This one seems maybe a bit more intense.
It is a little more intense, but also incredibly powerful.
Okay.
Basically, each team member identifies the single most important contribution of every other member.
Oh, wow.
And then the one area that they need to improve upon.
Or eliminate.
Yeah.
For the good of the team.
For the good of the team. It's very, direct and to the point.
Yeah. No sugarcoating here.
No sugarcoating. And it, while it requires a certain level of trust to do this effectively,
Right.
it can yield some surprisingly positive results.
Even for teams that are really struggling.
Yeah, because you're getting that honest, constructive feedback.
And it's coming from a place of wanting to help the team succeed, not to, tear each other down.
Exactly. It's about having those tough conversations, but framing them in a way that's, focused on collective growth and improvement.
So it's not just about individual self-awareness.
Right.
But it's about understanding how each person's strengths and weaknesses impact the team as a whole.
Precisely. It's shifting the focus from me to we.
Right, right.
Moving away from that individualistic mindset.
Now, there are other tools that Lencioni talks about, too, like personality and behavioral preference profiles.
Yeah, things like Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs, those can be really insightful, but I've also seen them used in ways that that kind of create more division than unity, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Lencioni actually cautions against, using those tools for things like, performance reviews or compensation decisions.
Makes sense.
Because it can lead to people, kind of manipulating their answers
Right.
or trying to fit into a certain mold.
Right, like you don't want to be pigeonholed based on...
Exactly, exactly. You want people to be authentic, to be honest,
Right.
not trying to, game the system.
Instead, he suggests using these assessments for purely developmental purposes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Helping individuals understand their own strengths and weaknesses.
And how they can contribute most effectively.
Right, and how they can contribute more effectively to the team.
Exactly. So it's about self-awareness, but also understanding your role within that team ecosystem.
Right, right. And then there are those kind of experiential team building activities that a lot of companies use, like, ropes courses or escape rooms.
Oh, yeah, the trust falls, all that stuff.
Yeah, the trust falls. I've always been a little skeptical of those.
Yeah.
Do they really have a lasting impact?
Lencioni acknowledges that those activities can be beneficial,
Yeah.
but only if they're built upon a foundation of trust and open communication,
Right, so it's not a magic bullet.
It's not a magic bullet.
You can't just throw people into a challenging situation and expect them to suddenly become this cohesive team.
Exactly, exactly. The real work, happens in those day-to-day interactions, consistently applying the principles of, trust, healthy conflict, commitment, accountability, all that.
So let's bring this back to decision tech. Do we actually see them using these tools?
Oh, absolutely. Remember that scene where Catherine asks everyone to share their personal histories?
Yeah, yeah.
We learned that Carlos is the oldest of 9 kids.
Right.
Mikey studied ballet at Juilliard. Jeff was a bat boy for the Red Sox.
Yeah. It seems lighthearted, but it's a deliberate step towards building that vulnerability-based trust, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it shifts the dynamic almost instantly, They're no longer just these executives in suits.
Right.
They're real people with shared experiences.
It's subtle, but it's a really powerful way to kind of break down those invisible barriers that prevent, real teamwork from happening.
Totally. And then there's that scene where Catherine, facilitates a discussion about their behavioral styles.
Right, right. Yeah.
Encouraging them to acknowledge both their strengths and their weaknesses.
It's like a subtle nudge toward that team effectiveness exercise.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it's not, explicitly labeled as such.
Because they're already starting to have those conversations, right?
They are.
About how their individual tendencies are impacting their work, their interactions with each other.
And it sets the stage for them to, really dive deep into those dysfunctions and start using those tools to overcome them.
But there's one character who seems really resistant to this whole process, Mikey. How do you deal with someone who just doesn't seem to want to be a team player, even if they're really talented?
That's a question that I think a lot of teams struggle with.
Yeah.
And it's something that Lencioni addresses head on through Mikey's journey. But I think we need to pause here again and give you, the listeners, some time to reflect on this.
Okay. Yeah.
Think about someone on your team who might be like Mikey.
Right.
What are some strategies that you could use to bring him on board, or if necessary, help him move on?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. But we'll be back soon to explore how Catherine handles this challenging situation and what lessons we can learn from it.
Okay, so we're back and ready to unpack that question we left hanging. How do you deal with that resistance to team building? Especially from someone, as talented but disruptive as Mikey.
It's a tough one, no doubt.
Yeah.
And Lencioni doesn't offer any easy answers. Mikey's character, I think, really highlights that sometimes, no matter how skilled someone is, if they're just unwilling to function as part of a team, it might be better for everyone if they,
They move on.
If they move on.
Yeah.
It's a tough call. But as we see with Catherine, sometimes it's necessary to protect the team's health and ultimately achieve those desired results.
It really emphasizes that the collective good needs to come before individual talent.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not just about those, performance metrics.
Right.
It's about how one person's behavior can impact that entire team dynamic.
Yeah.
Mikey's negativity, her dismissive attitude towards others, it creates this ripple effect that can poison the well, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like a virus that spreads and infects the whole team if it's left unchecked.
Exactly. It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is how Catherine actually addresses this head on.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't try to sweep it under the rug or pretend everything is fine.
Right.
She confronts Mikey directly
Yeah.
and makes it clear that change is needed.
That takes guts.
It does.
It would be so easy to just, avoid that uncomfortable conversation and just hope that things magically work themselves out.
Hope for the best.
But Catherine realizes that, ignoring the problem only makes it worse.
You gotta rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where her own personal experience, I think, becomes so powerful.
Oh yeah.
Remember that story she shares about getting fired for, tolerating a top performer's bad behavior?
Yeah.
Fred, the brilliant but toxic analyst.
Yeah, talk about a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that sometimes you have to make these difficult choices, even if it means losing, a star player.
And it drives home the point that it's not about being ruthless
Yeah.
or heartless.
Yeah. Right.
It's about recognizing that the well-being of the entire team
Mm-hmm.
is more important than any one individual's ego
Or career aspirations.
or career aspirations. Exactly.
It's a delicate balance, though, isn't it? Like, you don't want to stifle a healthy debate
Right.
or individuality, but you also need to set those clear boundaries. Yeah.
You do.
And hold people accountable for their actions.
Accountability is key.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Catherine, such a compelling leader.
Mm-hmm.
She's not afraid to have those difficult conversations.
Right.
But she does it, with empathy and a genuine desire to help her team succeed.
Yeah, she's not just barking orders from her corner office, right?
Oh.
She's in the trenches with them, working through this messy process of building a truly functional team.
It's a journey. It's not a destination.
Yeah, and it's not a quick fix, is it?
Yeah.
It takes time and effort and consistent reinforcement.
I gotta stay committed to the process.
Even after Mikey's departure, there are those moments of
Oh, yeah.
doubt and backsliding, right?
It's not always a straight line upwards.
Right.
There are going to be bumps along the way.
Like when they almost accept that acquisition offer.
Oh, yeah, for their competitor.
Yeah, it would have been, easy to cash in and walk away.
Yeah, take the money and run.
But they ultimately they choose to stay true to their shared vision.
It's about the long game.
Right.
It's about building something that lasts.
That scene, it really highlights the power of teamwork,
It does.
and the importance of those fundamental principles that Lencioni outlines: trusting each other, embracing healthy conflict, committing to those decisions,
Holding each other accountable.
holding each other accountable, and ultimately, focusing on those collective results.
That's the magic formula.
And it's not just about achieving those business goals.
Right.
It's about finding that joy and satisfaction in the work itself.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Right. Yeah. In being part of a team that truly functions as a unit.
It clicks on all cylinders.
It's about tapping into that collective wisdom and energy,
Absolutely.
that emerges when people truly work together towards a common goal.
That's where the magic happens.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway from the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
It is.
It's a reminder that teamwork is it's both essential and achievable.
You can get there.
But it requires that deliberate effort
Yeah.
and ongoing commitment
It's not a one-time fix.
and a willingness to face those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our teams.
You got to be honest with yourselves.
You've given us so much to think about.
I hope so.
As you continue to dive deep into this book, consider which dysfunction resonates most with your own experience and what tools you can implement.
Yeah, give it a try. See what works for you.
Maybe start with those personal histories.
Yeah, good place to start.
You might be surprised at the connections you forge and the strength you build.
One conversation at a time.
One conversation at a time. Until next time, happy teaming.